Yeah, today we're going to talk about installing locking tuners and installing a Tusq nut. So this is what came in the box. It came with everything you need to replace your stock tuners. We are doing this on the Amazon kit that I'm building right now, but you can do this for any 10mm hole guitar that you have. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with the quality of these tuners so far. We'll see once we get them strung up and working and under tension to how that goes. But compared to these Chinese ones that come in the kit, they are way, way better. They were like $38 or something, so they're mid-grade stuff, not necessarily high-end stuff, but Musiclily is somehow affiliated with Wilkinson, so I'm really excited to try this stuff out and see what kind of quality it is, because Wilkinson's known for quality hardware. So if you find this kind of content intriguing and you're not subscribed yet, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you here. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and leave them down below and I will answer them as soon as I can. So let's get started. This should be a fairly easy job to do, and we shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. So, like I said before, it is a 10mm hole, and what I do is I will put the tuner obviously in the hole, and then I'll take the washer and stick it over the post and then screw in the nut that goes on there. And I just do everything hand tight while I'm doing this. I get them all on there before I snug anything down. And as you can see here, the hole's 10mm, and as long as you order the right size hole, you really shouldn't have any issues. I also have a 10mm socket that I use when I snug it all down, but before I do that, I will take it and just put it in my hand and sort of give it a little bit of a squeeze here. Not tight or anything, just enough to just make it to where when I adjust the back side of it, that it's easy to do, and it won't move around, because you got to line up the holes for that little screw in the back. So now I just flip it over to the back side here and I line up the screw hole. And sometimes they're a little bit funky. This one was relatively easy, and this will tell you whether or not the screw holes come straight from the factory or not. Anyway, you just line up the holes as carefully as you can and start that little screw. Just be real careful because you don't want to strip it out or anything like that. So I would just use a hand tool for this. I wouldn't even mess with a drill at this point. You just never know. These little screws can easily strip out. So once all the screws are started and snugged down, I go ahead and tighten everything up because you have everything in line now. You don't have to worry about having to adjust anything. So I get those nice and tight. And then I will get ready to flip it over and start tightening down the nut. So for this, you can either use a wrench or a socket. I prefer a socket because you're on all sides of the nut that way. And so, it's just snugging them up. You could do it over a couple times or you could just do it one time. You don't want to crank on it. You just want to get them tight. And that's it. That's all there is to it. They're on there, nice and straight as the holes that were pre-drilled will let you do it. And you can see it's nice and flush. Everything's tight, and you didn't mar up the nuts by trying to use a pair of pliers or anything like that. And yeah, they look great. So now let's talk about the Tusq nut. This is a Tusq XL. It's a flat bottom for a Fender Strat style guitar. And they always make them a little bit bigger than what will fit into the slot, which is great because this way you just have to sand it down a little bit to get it to fit very snugly, because you don't want these flopping around in there, and you definitely don't want to glue them in with super glue. The only kind of glue I use is I use a little bit of wood glue on there just to keep it into place, but you'll see that it's a very tight fit anyway. So what I use for this is some double-sided tape, a block with 400 grit sandpaper on there, and a utility knife blade, some kind of a blade there with a sharp edge on it. And this will get me to where I need to be with the nut to get it to fit just right. So as you can see here, this is the old nut, and it's flush with both the edges. And so what I do is I will just score right next to where the nut is, and not deep or anything, just to make sure if there's any kind of glue or anything that it'll break that plane. And you just want to be very careful when you do this to not scratch anything or whatnot. And then I just take a small little screwdriver and put it down toward the bottom of the nut, and it popped right out. So once we get the Tusq nut out of here, you will see the difference in size. Like, you could take a caliper and measure everything and do it that way, but I've got a much easier way to do this, where you don't have to mess with any of that stuff, and it's quick and dirty, and you'll be done with it. So since this is pre-slotted, what I do is I take some double-sided tape and I trim it down nice and small, and I line the slots up with the old nut, okay? So that way you're going to see that there's going to be a little bit bigger edges on both sides, and you don't want to start from one side to the other, because then your slots are going to be off. So if you line up the slots perfectly, then you can trim down each side as you need to. And I always line up the bass side with the bass side and the treble side with the treble side, and basically with that double-sided tape it sticks together just fine. And I get it, as close as I possibly can. And then I'll start sanding pretty soon here. I don't know if you can see this really well, but the slots are perfectly lined up right there. And then what I'll do is I'll get ready to start taking some off of the edges. Now I take the 400 grit sandpaper and I use some double-sided tape, and I only cover a part of the block with it. That way when I'm sanding and when I get close to the old nut, I can use the smooth side there and take some off of the new nut and not take any off of the old, so that the sizes will stay the same. I think this is a little bit better shot so you can see the difference in the size right there on each end. And you can see the slots are lined up. And so as long as we take down the edges to the same size as the other nut, then everything should still be centered, and you won't have to worry about getting crazy with anything messing up that way. And, take your time with it. Like, you don't have to, this isn't a race. You know what I mean? Like, just be careful, take your time with it. 400 grits won't take too much off at once. If you use heavier grit sandpaper, it might take off faster, but you might take too much off faster too, right? So you can also take a piece by hand and sort of round off the edge up on top there to get it nice and, finished looking. You could also polish it up if you want with a lighter grade sandpaper, but these nuts don't show very much anyway, so I don't really worry about it too much. And now it's time to try to get it to fit. If it's too wide, you just take a little bit off the edges as you go and fit it in there. And there you go. It's nice and snug, and it's not going anywhere, and your edges are flush. That means that your string spacing is going to be right, and you don't have to worry about it. And now it's time to just add a little bit of wood glue just to make sure that it doesn't move around any, and you are good to go. So when I add the glue to it, I just take a Q-tip and I cut the cotton part off of it, and you just use the toothpick part of it. And I just dip a little bit into the wood glue, and I just put a couple dabs on there. And you don't really need hardly anything. I mean, besides that, it's snug as it is, right? So this is just a little bit of precaution, but this also will allow you to be able to remove the nut anytime you need to, in case you take too much off in the setup and you need to replace it or anything like that. You don't want to use super glue for the nut because you'll never get it out. And if you do, it'll just be a mess. So that's what I would recommend to do. And then you can see here how it just fits a little bit snug, a little bit tight in there. And then, you know, just let it dry. And by the time you're ready to string it up, it's going to be a beautiful nut. And then when it comes time to do the setup, all you have to do is just check your nut height, and you should be good to go. And you can see it's nice and flush with the edges. It fit down in the hole really great. And, you know, now you have a quality nut for your inexpensive kick guitar that you're building. So I think that'll about do it for this video. Please feel free to leave a like, subscribe, or comment. I'm providing a playlist for this series, so if you decide later on that you want to build it, you'll be able to go step by step how I'm doing this and see the whole process. It takes a little bit longer than what I had planned, but there's a lot of important information that needs to be shared, and I don't want to leave anything out. So have a beautiful week. We will see you on the next one, and take care.